Hello, U.S. history. Today is Tuesday, November 3rd. We're going to finish really quickly these notes. The topic was immigration. We're finishing that topic today. Let me show you the slide really quick. That was the topic slide. There's also special instructions on how to do attendance today in this slideshow, so make sure you watch very carefully. We ended up on this slide about Americanization, the one with Uncle Sam on it. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the next one. The reality for immigrants when they arrived. They ended up in crowded cities with very few services. There weren't things like citywide garbage collection or sanitation or anything like that yet. They ended up in ethnic neighborhoods, especially places out on the East Coast. And when you think about it, we have them here too. And very often immigrants, sometimes of course they would go somewhere where they had a familiar language or a place where people practice their religion. But sometimes it was required, like in the case of Chinatown in California or in San Francisco, many cities. But for a while, it was a requirement that the Chinese lived in that area of the city. So we'll talk more about that later. But that thing about neighborhoods, sometimes it wasn't exactly voluntary. They lived in crowded, unsanitary tenements, and you probably ran into that term in your Quizlet. Basically, just like large apartment buildings where you would share kitchens and bathroom facilities with other families. They had to, when they first arrived, take low paying, very dangerous sometimes, and unskilled work. And very often were the victims of con men. They didn't have very much protection from the police. And this is how mafias grew in cities. They started as protection organizations for immigrants and then grew into their own kind of like organizations or businesses. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. Immigrants, experience a lot of prejudice and exclusion. We saw the first primary source we looked at was that cartoon of people wanting to keep an immigrant from coming into New York Harbor. That happened all over. The Chinese Exclusion Act was one notable one, especially in California, that had a large population of Chinese immigrants. It limited the number of immigrants that could come in per year. Sometimes they cut it down to zero. There were quotas set on certain groups coming into the United States. At one time, it was Jews. They had limits on quotas on people coming from Eastern Europe. So that was another form of prejudice. Some of the rules were so strict that there's people who are famous in history that would have been kicked out of the United States. For example, Jesus Christ was Jewish, and because of the quota set on Jews coming into the United States, they would have kicked him out in a country that said that they were a Christian country. So some of the exclusionary laws were very strict. This leads to the growth of political machines in cities. Political machines formed in these cities as kind of their own money making organizations, but in a lot of ways, they did help immigrants. They did provide services to immigrants like jobs, housing, quote unquote protection. But in exchange, you had to either pay, like a mafia, or promise political support once you could vote. So that's how mafias form. Let's say you have a group of Polish immigrants coming into New York. You would send other Polish immigrants to meet them and basically kind of offer them a job, a place to live, but they have to give you 10% of their paycheck every week. That's how mafias make money. They do it by extorting people by making promises of protection and things like that. So that's how, especially like places like New York and Chicago, these mafias form. They are organizations who form to protect immigrants, but later, of course, they exploit those immigrants by taking their money. Um, and these exclusion laws continue up until the 1920s, limiting people that could come in, sometimes based on race, sometimes based on religion, very exclusionary. And right now, make sure you watch or you look at the slide carefully. It's only good for today, and we have to see who's paying attention. So you're sending me an email with your name and what special event is happening today, which is November 3rd. And hopefully you know that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop here. The next thing you're going to do, there is an Edpuzzle attached in Classroom just under this recording.